The hall was filled with the heavy breath of silence. Ash still clung to the stones like a second skin, and the Iron Throne, once the symbol of fear and power, lay as melted steel, twisted like broken bones. Daenerys Targaryen was dead. Jon Snow, the quiet executioner of a queen he once loved, stood hollow-eyed and waiting for judgment. And the council, what remained of the shattered kingdoms, gathered not to mourn but to decide. Tyrion Lannister, unshaven and half-broken, turned toward Bran Stark, who sat in his chair of wooden wheels. "You have the most knowledge, the clearest mind. You've seen all our past, and maybe our future. You should be king." Bran didn't blink. "I cannot be lord of anything. I live in the past now." Tyrion's face twitched. "Then who?" He looked around. Eyes darted from one noble to another. Sansa sat tall, calm as northern snow. Gendry stood near Davos, silent and waiting. Samwell held the weight of old books. And young Hope. No one dared speak the name they were all thinking. Arya stood by a pillar, away from the council, away from the throne. She wore no sigil, no crown, only needle at her side, and a face that had seen too much for a girl her age. "She doesn't want it," Sansa finally said. Arya's eyes flicked up. "That's why she should have it," said Tyrion, louder now. "She doesn't hunger for power. She's known fear, war, death. She's walked among the faceless and still come back with a soul. She doesn't want to rule, and that's the only reason she must." There was no cheer, no rising chant or dramatic moment of loyalty, just tired faces staring at the girl who had once been no one. Arya didn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, it wasn't to accept. "I'm not like you," she said. "I don't care about thrones or songs or history. I don't believe in heroes. I've seen kings bleed just like rats in the alley." "And yet, here you are," said Tyrion softly. Arya's voice lowered. "If I take it, it will not be like it was." "It shouldn't be," said Davos. She looked at Bran. "You see everything. Would I destroy it?" Bran didn't answer right away. Then his strange eyes met hers. "No, but you'll burn it all down before you build it back." Arya turned to Sansa. "Will you rule the north?" Sansa nodded. "As its own kingdom." Arya looked around at the others. "Then the rest of you better get used to the truth. I'm not your queen, I'm not your savior, but I'll take your damn crown if it means I can stop the bleeding." No one clapped, no one bowed, but no one protested either. The girl who had no name, who killed the Night King, who crossed oceans and wore the faces of her enemies, now stood as Queen of the Seven, no 6 kingdoms, but the weight of it did not come with a coronation. It came with the silence that followed, the unspoken fear in the hearts of lords who didn't know if they just elected a savior or a storm. That night, Arya didn't sleep in the Red Keep. She stood at the edge of what remained of the Blackwater Bay, looking out toward the unknown. She didn't want a throne. She wanted freedom. But now she would have to give up one to protect the other. Behind her, the city smoldered. Ahead of her, a kingdom waited for a queen who would never. You'd call herself one. Arya refused the coronation ceremony. She said no to the robes, the crown, the kneeling lords and ladies. She wouldn't sit on a throne because there was none left to sit on, and she wouldn't rebuild it either. "A chair made of swords doesn't make you powerful," she told them. "It just makes you bleed slower." She held her first council on the steps of the destroyed Red Keep, ash still flaking in the wind like cursed snow. Her advisors sat on broken stones and cracked marble. There were no banners, just people. Tyrion stood to her right, once again Hand of the Queen. He had not asked for it, but she told him plainly, "You're the best liar here. I need that." Sansa returned to Winterfell, now queen in the north. Her last words to Arya were cold but sincere. "You were never meant to be someone else's lady. Just don't forget who you are when the game changes." Arya nodded. "I never played their game. I just killed the players." The capital was restless. Whispers filled the alleys. A Stark girl? A killer? A ghost in daylight? People didn't know whether to fear her or admire her. Some thought she was a puppet, controlled by the likes of Tyrion and Davos. Others feared she was a northern conqueror in disguise, ready to drown the southern lords in quiet revenge. Arya didn't care. Her first order wasn't about taxes or banners or noble titles. She sent ravens across Westeros declaring the abolition of all royal blood privileges. No more lords by birth. If you want to rule, you fight for it. You earn it. The Reach balked. The Stormlands scoffed. The Vale stayed silent, but its new wardens watched carefully. Dawn sent no reply, as usual. "I'm not here to be liked," Arya told Tyrion. "I'm here to keep the wolves from circling." "But you're already surrounded," he said quietly. That night, an assassin slipped into the Queen's quarters. He died before he could draw breath. His throat opened from the shadows. Arya stood behind him, barefoot, no armor, no guards. Just needle in one hand, and the knife she took from Littlefinger in the other. She left his body in the hall for everyone to see. The message was simple. "You want to kill me? You better be faster than death." Some started to call her the Silent Wolf. Others whispered the Faceless Queen, but no one dared say it to her face. Her second decree outlawed forced marriages, the selling of girls to secure alliances, and gave women the right to reject noble contracts. The lords of Westeros erupted. In fury, House Redwine called it treason against tradition. House Hightower accused her of inviting chaos. Arya simply said, "Let them starve. Their wine won't matter when no one's left to drink it." She moved the royal seat from the Red Keep to the streets of King's Landing, turning the ruins into a court open to the commoners. Every week she sat without guards among the people, hearing grievances, settling blood feuds, and asking one question to every petitioner. "What do you want?" It unsettled the nobles. It inspired the poor. But power never stays still. Far across the sea, whispers reached the Golden Company. In Braavos, the faceless men heard of their lost daughter rising in Westeros. Some saw her as a traitor to the many-faced god, others as a prophecy fulfilled. In Old Town, a forgotten Targaryen bastard stirred rumors with promises to restore fire to the throne, and in the shadows of the city, former Lannister loyalists began gathering, led by a name Arya thought she'd buried under rubble long ago. The past was never really dead. And though Arya Stark ruled now, the game was already rewriting itself. She had come back to save the realm from power, but power, like death, never truly sleeps. The rebellion didn't begin with swords. It started with songs. In taverns across the Reach, minstrels sang about the Wolf Queen who butchered her way to power. They told tales of a northern witch who wore faces and cursed the south. They said she had dragon blood in her veins and ice in her heart. Most of it was lies, beautiful, dangerous lies. But lies, Arya knew, were often deadlier than blades. Tyrion listened to the songs with a glass of wine and a tight jaw. "You've become the monster in their bedtime stories." Arya barely blinked. "Good. Monsters survive." Meanwhile, the Lords of the Reach, Stormlands, and even the Vale started holding quiet councils behind closed doors. No one openly defied Arya yet, but their silence turned colder. The new world she was building didn't fit their legacies, and without the comfort of bloodlines and arranged power, many feared becoming irrelevant. Her advisors warned her. Davos said it gently, like a friend. "They won't kneel to someone who doesn't speak their language." Varys might have smiled at that. If he'd lived to see it, Arya replied only with action. She doubled the number of city patrols, not with knights or noble-born guards, but with sellswords, orphans, and former slaves. She called them the Watchers, and gave them no colors, only black armor with a single symbol, a wolf's eye. She gave power to the powerless, and that terrified the powerful. But while the lords schemed, another shadow moved in silence. Arya had sensed it for days. A presence, a stare, Then one night, the wind carried a scent she hadn't smelled in years. Leather, pine, and blood. A memory of Winterfell before the world turned upside down. She followed it deep into the ruins of the dragon pit, past the broken bones of old beasts. A hooded figure stood in the center, waiting. She drew needle without a word. "So it's true," the figure said. "The little wolf grew up." Arya's voice was low. "You're dead." The hood dropped. Sandor Clegane, the hound, half his face, was still burned, but his eyes burned sharper than ever. He looked older, meaner, and somehow more alive than ever. "You left me to die," he said. "You deserved it." He grinned. "Still do." She lowered her blade slightly. "Why are you here?" "Because you're about to get killed, and I hate everyone who's not me, but I hate cowards worse. Thought I'd keep you breathing a bit longer." Arya didn't smile, but something in her shoulders eased. He wasn't a friend. He was worse, someone who told her the truth even when she didn't want it. Back in the Red Keep, Tyrion watched from the shadows as messages poured in, reports of secret meetings. In the Reach, uprisings in the Riverlands, and worse, ships flying the banner of a black dragon with red eyes. Not Targaryen, something older, something darker, and behind it all a name began to surface. A whisper in the dark. Jaqen H'ghar, the man with no name, the one who trained her, the one she thought she'd left behind. But now, he hadn't just returned. He was building something, a religion, a rebellion, a reckoning. Arya didn't know, but she felt it, the past clawing its way back into her lungs. Later that week, a message arrived from the Iron Islands. Yara Greyjoy offered ships, gold, and her loyalty, under one condition. "Let me burn Old Town to the ground. They think the sea can't reach them." Arya paused, then gave her answer without flinching. "Salt the earth." Tyrion paled. "You're starting a war," he warned. Arya nodded. "No, I'm ending one." And just like that, the South realized it was no longer dealing with a girl who once chased cats in castle halls. This was a queen carved by death, crowned by fire, and raised by wolves, and she was ready to kill the old world to protect the one she'd never asked to lead. Old Town burned like a prayer never meant to be answered. Yara Greyjoy's fleet came at night, black sails, salt-drenched wood, and fire barrels flung like thunder across the bay. The citadel's towers crumbled in waves of flame. Ravens scattered, scrolls screamed. The greatest library in Westeros, the pride of the Maesters, lit up the sky like a second sun, and Arya Stark watched it from a hill outside the city. She didn't flinch. When Davos reached her breathless and horrified, she was still as stone. "You just destroyed 1,000 years of knowledge," he said. "All for what? Revenge?" She turned slowly. "Control. Control of what? The future?" "No," Arya said. "The narrative." Because she knew what history did to women like her. It twisted them, turned them into warnings, painted them mad. She wouldn't give them ink to poison her legacy. "If they want to remember me," she said coldly, "they'll do it with their mouths, not their books." Tyrion stared into the flames from the hilltop, the firelight dancing in his wine cup. "You just made 1,000 new enemies," he whispered. "I already had them," Arya replied. "Old Town's fall sent shockwaves across the realm." The Hightowers, furious and blood-soaked, called her a tyrant. The Faith of the Seven declared her the cursed Queen of Ash. Dorne withdrew entirely from council. The Vale closed its roads. The Reach raised a new banner. Green thorns over golden flame. Arya didn't blink. She ordered her watchers to seize all trade routes entering the capital. Every loaf, every sack of grain, every ship that wanted passage would answer to her. And she sent a single raven to the new leader of the Reach. "Rebellion, come take it from me, if you can." But while Westeros burned on the surface, the real storm festered in silence. Jaqen H'ghar had returned, not as an assassin, but as a prophet. He wore no face of his own now, just a golden mask carved like a weeping skull. In the ruins of Harrenhal, he gathered men and women who had been broken by war, left behind by kingdoms. He called them the Forgotten and promised them a gift: freedom from identity, freedom from pain, freedom from the self. But he lied. He wasn't building salvation. He was building vengeance. Arya was the first to ever leave the House of Black and, white with her soul intact. To them, she was a blasphemy, a face that never truly faded, and now they were coming for her. Word reached Arya through a whispering girl who collapsed at the gates of King's Landing. Her face half melted, her voice nearly gone. "They're here," she croaked. "In the walls, in the kitchens, wearing your guards, your servants. They don't come for the crown, they come for you." Arya listened without fear, but fear wasn't the point. She knew the faceless ones wouldn't attack like an army. They would come one by one, wearing smiles, walking in her dreams. She needed someone who could help her think like them again. So she did the unthinkable. She sent for Melisandre's apprentice, the Red Priestess known as Vera, now wandering. The East, spreading tales of fire and sacrifice. Vera arrived wrapped in smoke and secrets, her eyes glowing like dying embers. "You summon fire to fight shadows?" she asked Arya. Arya stared back. "I summon what I need." Vera touched her cheek. "You were once no one. You must become worse." Arya didn't flinch. "Teach me." And so, deep beneath the Red Keep in forgotten catacombs, Arya Stark trained. Again, this time not to kill, but to outwit death itself. She shed her name again, not for silence, but for strategy. Above ground, the rebellion marched toward King's Landing. Below, Arya learned to move like a shadow that remembered how to bleed. The faceless men were coming, but so was the girl they should have never trained. The palace was no longer safe. Arya had always trusted silence. Silence never lied. But now it betrayed her. Her footsteps echoed differently in the halls. Her food tasted wrong. Even the air in her chambers felt borrowed. The faceless men had entered her world, and worse, they had learned it. They didn't just wear the faces of servants and strangers. They wore the faces of people she trusted. The first betrayal came from a girl Arya had once saved during the riots. A baker's daughter turned informant, sweet and star-eyed, who served Arya tea each morning. She tried to slip the poison in with honey. Arya saw it. She didn't scream. She didn't punish the girl in front of anyone. She followed her into the hall, placed a dagger gently against her back and whispered, "Who are you?" The girl trembled. "No one." Arya leaned in. "No, you're dead." The girl collapsed before the guards even noticed she was gone. Word spread through the palace. The queen had begun executing staff in silence. Every room felt colder. Every face earned suspicion. The watchers tightened their grip, but fear made men sloppy. Trust vanished, and the faceless men fed on that. Tyrion began drinking again. "They'll turn us into a kingdom of ghosts," he muttered. "Your fear is their weapon." Arya didn't respond. She had no room left for fear. Then came the second betrayal. Lord Baelric of House Harroway, a minor Riverlands noble, loyal in council, quiet in ambition. He hosted Arya for a state dinner, spoke of peace, smiled at her like she was a niece, halfway. Through the meal, he drew a blade from beneath the table. He wasn't Baelric. He was no one. Arya stopped him with a flick of needle and drove it through his eye. The guests screamed. His blood soaked the roast. His face peeled, revealing the haggard mask of a priest she had once known in Braavos. That night, Arya ordered all noble feasts and banquets suspended indefinitely. "If you want to speak to me," she announced, "do it under daylight and without wine." The lords murmured about madness. The commoners murmured about war. And Arya, she no longer slept. She trained each night with Vera, learning to sense lies through breath, to read intent in the angle of a jaw. Vera taught her to fight shadows with fire, literal and otherwise. She marked her chamber walls with red glyphs of protection and pain. She whispered forgotten names to the flames, but nothing prepared her for the next face. It was Jon. He stepped out from the shadows of the godswood. Arya froze. Jon? He looked tired, haunted, the way he always looked after killing someone he loved. I came to see you, he said. Her hand hovered near Needle. Where did you come from? The wall, he said. Ghost is with the wildlings. I had to know if you'd become what they say. She narrowed her eyes. Say something only Jon Snow would know. He hesitated. Before Father died, you told me you'd make a sword for me out of dragon glass. I said I wanted it to glow. You said... Arya lunged. Needle pierced his chest. And he didn't bleed. He smiled. Then changed. The face melted, the body twisted, the voice laughed like cracked glass. It was Jaqen, but not the man she remembered. This was something else now, something broken, or worse, something complete. You wear power poorly, he whispered. You became the very thing you once ran from. Arya raised her blade again, but he vanished into the trees, like smoke, like memory. He left behind a single coin on the snow-covered ground, the coin of the faceless men. That night, Arya didn't eat. She didn't train. She stood at the window, watching the city flicker under torchlight. Her crown was invisible. Her enemies were not, she whispered to herself over and over. I am Arya Stark of Winterfell, and I will not die quietly. They came at dawn, when the fog was thick and the watchers were still changing shifts. The rebellion wasn't led by banners. It wasn't a proud march or a clash of honor. It was a siege born of bitterness and cowardice. The Reach, the Vale, and a dozen lesser houses moved together under one purpose: remove the wolf and restore the order. Arya knew it would come. She had prepared for months, not with walls and catapults, but with traps, spies, and sabotage. Every tunnel beneath the Red Keep had been laced with fire barrels. Every guard had been tested, broken, and rebuilt into someone who feared her more than death. Still, she felt the tremor when the first gate fell. The city trembled, screams rose, and just like that, King's Landing once again became a graveyard for kings. Tyrion burst into the war room, his hand already bloodied. They've bribed the outer watchers, he spat. The Vale's troops are through the west gate. The Reach is pushing through Flea Bottom. We have maybe an hour. Arya stood in silence, no crown on her head. No sigil on her chest, only Needle strapped tight against her back. Vaira entered behind her, cloaked in red. The shadows are dancing, she said. Tonight the gods decide which of you is worthy. Arya turned to Tyrion. Get to the tunnels. Take anyone who still believes. He stared at her. You're not coming? She didn't answer because she wasn't running. Outside, the city burned again. The people had once cried for Daenerys to stop. Now, no one cried. They were too tired, too empty. They had nothing left to mourn. Arya walked the palace halls alone, passing old portraits, shattered columns, burned silk. She reached the throne room just as the doors boomed with the weight of battering rams. The melted iron throne sat in silence. Behind her, a twisted sculpture of a past that refused to stay buried. She stood before it, not to protect it, but to witness what came next. The doors cracked, dozens poured in, lords in armor, knights with bloody swords, even a few familiar faces, men who once pledged loyalty to her council, now screaming for her death. She didn't flinch. Lord Harland of House Tarly stepped forward, blood dripping from his gauntlet. You ruled with fear. You burned the old ways. You turned this kingdom into your playground of orphans and bastards. Arya's voice was calm. And you would rather die clinging to tradition than live in something better. He raised his sword. She drew Needle, and the killing began. They rushed her all at once. But Arya wasn't a queen trained for ceremony. She was a shadow from Braavos, a Stark raised on war. A girl who had danced with death since she was 12. Needle. Sliced throats in silence. Daggers found armor cracks like water through stone. She killed without screaming, without anger, just precision, just survival. But there were too many. A sword caught her shoulder, another scraped her thigh. Blood slicked the floor. She stumbled once, and that was enough. Harlan struck again, this time knocking Needle from her hand. She fell to her knees. He raised his blade, and then the doors behind her blew open, not with fire, with wolves. Grey, Wind's descendants, bred in secret in the north, rushed the chamber, teeth bared, eyes red with rage. Behind them came the Watchers, loyal to Arya, led by a ghost from another war, Sandor Clegane. The Hound crushed 2 men before they even turned. "You bastards forgot," he growled. "She's not the one who dies easy." The bloodbath was short, violent and absolute. When it ended, only Arya remained standing, breath ragged, body bloodied. Harlan was dead. The throne room ran red. Vera entered last, stepping over corpses, her hands glowing with firelight. "You've bought time," she said. Arya didn't look at her. "I didn't buy it," she whispered. "I bled for it." And then, from the shadows, another figure emerged, Jaqen. He stood at the far end of the hall, untouched by the chaos, his golden mask catching the sunrise. "A girl has chosen war," he said softly. Arya's voice cracked. "No," she replied. "A girl chose to survive." The room smelled of blood and old steel. Bodies lay still, the throne barely visible behind the mess of flesh and broken banners. Arya stood, swaying slightly, pain pulsing through her shoulder and thigh like slow lightning. Across from her, Jaqen Hagar was silent, his golden mask calm, detached, unfeeling. "You came to kill me?" she asked, voice hoarse. "No," Jaqen said. "A girl was already dead. I have only come to collect the body." Arya laughed bitterly. "You trained me. You taught me how to kill. You taught me to be no one. And then I chose to be someone. And now that offends you." Jaqen didn't move. "You were a gift, given to the many-faced god. You walked away. You wore names like armor, but the price of walking out is always the same." "And what is it?" Arya asked. "Obedience?" "No," he said. "Oblivion." She stared at him for a long time. Then she walked slowly, one step at a time, toward her sword. Needle was still warm, slick with death. She picked it up with a wince, her blood dripping on the stone. "Then I guess I'll have to kill a god today." Jaqen pulled back the golden mask and dropped it. Underneath there was no face, only shadow, only void. He came at her faster than anything human. His strikes weren't like a knight's. They didn't aim to wound. They aimed to erase. Arya barely dodged the first 3 blows. The 4th grazed her ribs. The 5th knocked her backward. He whispered as he fought. "You are not real. You are not Arya. You are not Queen. You are not Stark. You are only the echo of a dead girl trying to scream." Her breathing was ragged, her strength failing, but her will, that was untouched. "No," she said through gritted teeth. "I am Arya Stark of Winterfell. I am the blood in the snow. I am the last breath of every name you erased." She moved, like a whisper, like the shadow of her younger self, like the child who once danced with swords in Bravos under the moonlight. And then she did what no one had done. She cut the void. Needle sliced through the nothing that was Jaqen. The air screamed. The mask hit the floor with a clang. He staggered. For the first time he looked human again. He bled. "Impossible," he rasped. She stepped forward. "You taught me everything," she whispered. "But you never taught me how to stop." And she stabbed him again, this time through the heart. He fell without sound. The throne room was silent. Arya dropped her sword and fell to her knees. Her hands shook, her body broken in too many places to count. Vyra appeared beside her, crouching, eyes wide. "You killed death." Arya didn't answer, because something inside her cracked then, not with pain but with relief. She had been running from that face, that name, for so long, trying to be no one, someone, everyone. Now she was just her, Arya Stark. No crown, no mask, just a girl who survived. Later they gathered the bodies. The nobles would blame her. The faith would curse her. The songs would twist her into a shadowed legend. Tyrion stood at her side in the ruined hall. "You've won, you know. No one's left to take it from you." Arya looked at him exhausted. "Then maybe it's time to give it up." He raised an eyebrow. "And go where? Back to the sea, north of the wall?" She didn't answer, not yet, because the war might have ended. But the cost hadn't been counted, and somewhere in the east, whispers were already spreading again. Not of a queen, but of a ghost, the one who killed gods, the one who walked away from power covered in ash and blood. The fires were out, the rebellion crushed, and the gods had fallen. Arya Stark stood in the throne room one last time. The Iron Throne, what was left of it, was untouched. She didn't crown herself, she didn't declare a dynasty. She walked through the blood-soaked halls, past the courtiers who bowed in silence, past Tyrion, who asked nothing, and Vera, who only nodded. Then she left. No speech, no farewell, just a note left on the table in the war room. "Power is a curse. Let those who crave it fight over the bones. Arya Stark is not your queen. She never was. Sansa ruled the north. Tyrion became steward of the south. The realm rebuilt, slowly, uneasily, with scars. But stories spread of a woman with a direwolf's eyes seen in the east, walking with no name, of a blade called Needle that never dulled, of the girl who killed a god and walked away. They called her many things, but no one ever saw Arya Stark again. Some say she died, others say she lives still, wearing a new face. But those who knew her best, they just smiled and said, she was never meant for thrones, she was meant for freedom. And that's exactly what she took.